Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RowingChat. I'm Rebecca Caro, and RowingChat is the podcast network for the sport of rowing. There are lots of different shows on the network, and if you fancy becoming a podcaster yourself, please get in touch. Our website is rowing.chat, and we will be very grateful if you join our newsletter list, because then you receive a link once a week when a new episode is published. So no heavy selling or anything, it's just there as a reminder. We are very grateful to our sponsors, and I'm very happy today to be announcing a project that I've been working on since lockdown. RowingChat has built the Rowing Retailers Directory. We have made a single place online where anyone who sells things to do with the sport of rowing can list their business. Think of it a bit like a yellow pages for rowing, because there are so many different suppliers in so many different countries that often people won't ship internationally, or there's a local agent for the product that you want. And this will really help you be able to find what you want in a single place. There are categories so that you can just search for people who sell shoes, or people who sell oars or gifts or accessories or coaching services. In fact, there are 18 different categories. So go have a look. It's rowing.chat/retailers. And if you are a person running a business that is not listed there, you can also list your business on the site. Just get in touch with us and we'll tell you how. Our second sponsor is to give you early notification that my annual book, Rowing Tales, is going to be published in time for Christmas. Rowing Tales 2020 has got the usual array of funny, wry, and frankly disastrous rowing stories, which have been generously shared by you amazing people all over the global interwebs. If you've got a story that you think should be included, you can record it either as audio or you can write it and flick it over to me. You might just make this year's edition, and I'll tell you where and how to buy the book quite soon. The historic episodes are all on Amazon, so you can get 2017 through to 19. That's 3 books, and they're all available in Kindle or print versions on Amazon. And I will be doing a special offer when I launch, so that you can buy a bundle of books all in one fell swoop. Now, today I am delighted to welcome as my guest, Patricia Carswell. Welcome to RowingChat.
Thank you so much.
It's brilliant that you're here, because we've never actually met, but I am a massive fan of your blog.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was trying to work out today if we'd ever met in person. I don't think we have, but I feel like we know each other quite well already.
Isn't that the wonderful thing about rowing and the internet?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same with, I meet people at events and I can't remember whether we've met before or just kind of chatted online. It's great.
So let's kick off with getting you to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your personal history in the sport of rowing.
Okay, so I'm a late onset rower. I did a few weeks at university, and we can discount that. It was very unsuccessful, and it didn't grab me at all, so I forgot all about it. But when I was in my early 40s, I was starting to get into exercise. I tried a bit of running and hated it. And then I was standing watching my son row, and somebody on the bank started talking about it as something that people my age could do, which was an absolute revelation, because I thought, I was far too old to do anything like this. So I got started, and it kind of got under my skin in a way that no other sport or exercise had ever done. I'd always been resolutely unsporty, and it kind of happened naturally that because I wrote for a living, I would want to write about it. But the blog was really an outlet to spare my husband, who was very bored with hearing me go on and on about this new passion in my life.
That is a brilliant story. And let me just say right now how supportive our partners, husbands, wives, girlfriends, and so on are. And thank you very much for enabling you to become the girl on the river. So anyone who's not read Patricia's blog, it's girlonthe.river.com. So when did you actually start blogging?
It was, I think, almost 10 years ago. I think it was 2011 was my first post, because I'd started rowing, I think, regularly in 2010. And by 2011, the world and his wife had a blog. Everyone had a blog. And it actually wasn't my first blog. My first blog was a sort of abortive attempt at blogging. It was all about running. But it ran out as soon as my enthusiasm for running ran out, which was very, very quickly. So that was Girl on the Run. And when that didn't work out, then it became Girl on the River.
What an easy segue. I can totally see
exactly,
that.
Yeah.
So you're the adult beginner, you're the novice, you row in Monmouth, is that right, in Wales?
That's right.
And what did you start writing about? Why did people want to read your blog? Because lots of them do, including me.
I think the appeal was that I was just so bad at rowing. I mean, I really was. I know all novices are bad, but I was kind of spectacularly, catastrophically bad. I remember one outing when I caught 8 crabs in one outing and cried all the way home. And I never won anything. I entered race after race after race and just kept losing and losing and losing, mostly because I wasn't very good and very strong. But I had a huge amount of bad luck as well. We got disqualified. We had races where somebody's blade came out of the gate. We had one where the gate just came off. I mean, just one thing after another. So, and I think people could kind of relate, because no one wants to read, you know, how marvelous you are. I was the opposite of marvelous. And I think people kind of felt sorry for me and kind of related, because everybody has ups and downs. Rowing is one of those really frustrating sports. And, you know, we've all had bad races. We've all had outings that go badly. It's just, I had more of those than most.
And you're absolutely right about the relatable aspects, because that's why people like Rowing Tales. They read a story and they go, that happened to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, it kind of bonds us, doesn't it? The mutual pain.
Yes, my vision is that you're standing on a riverbank somewhere and you turn to the person next to you and make a remark, strike up a conversation, and then that exchange of anecdotes starts.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, so your subtitle to the blog is A Pint-Sized Rower, is that right?
That's right. The Diary of a Pint-Sized Rower. So I am a gigantic 5'3". I don't know what that is in meters, but it's small. To put this in context, when I coxed at the World Masters last year, I had to bring a 3-kilo weight in the boat with me. So that's how small I am. So I shouldn't really be rowing. I mean, it's the last sport anyone would have matched me with. I should be doing something like, I don't know, running or Zumba or something like that, but I don't happen to like any other sports. So what can you do?
So hooray for rowing, hooray for it getting you hooked. Tell us the story of you actually winning your first pot, because you have won races now, haven't you?
I have. I mean, it's still not that many, but you know, I'm not one of these people who has like a whole collection of pots and they don't know what to do with them. It's a very small collection, and I have more for coxing than for rowing, which is fine. That's good. But my first race, basically, I got to the point where my crewmates decided that they'd had enough of me complaining about never winning anything and decided they were going to make it happen. So we were at the local regatta at our neighbouring club, Ross Rowing Club, and they have the most brilliant annual regatta over 2 days. It's a highlight of my year, and it caused me deep pain that it didn't happen this year. And the standard, you never know what you're going to get. You get some amazing rowers there, or you can find yourself kind of splashing down the river with someone who's not very good. But anyway, they put me in a coxed 4 with 3 of the best women in the squad, and let me do my worst. And it wasn't actually that easy, because we ended up having a couple of heats and a semi-final. So we had to work for that win, but we did finally win. And it was a beautiful moment, and it was nice because it was in the summer and it was warm enough that they could throw me in the river to mark the occasion, as is the custom. I don't know, is that the custom all around the world? That's how we do it.
Not generally for rowers. So you were.
Oh, we do it when you lose your novice status, you get thrown in.
Right.
And again, for sculling. So I've been thrown in twice, which is nice.
I think your club is unique, because I learned to row age 19 in the UK, and we definitely didn't have that. I like that. Local traditions are good. So talk to me a little bit more about what you think the overlap is between this wonderful appeal of rowing, the challenging sport, and blogging about your personal journey through the challenges.
Well, rowing is it's one of those sports. It's really, you can't really get away with being terrible. You have to have a level of competence to be able to make it kind of bearable. If you're really, really terrible, it's just not enjoyable at all. And so it's a constant kind of quest to get better. And I think that's kind of one of the things that drew me in, the fact that it was a massive challenge every time I went out, that technical challenge and that quest to get better. And I know every sport has that to an extent, but there are a lot of sports, I think, where you can, like with running, for example, you can kind of plod along and it doesn't really matter if you're slow, you won't win anything, but you can still run. Whereas I think it's harder to be a really, really bad rower. You have to achieve a level of competence for it to be even remotely enjoyable. And then there's the river. I mean, just being outside, and this is going to make me really sad because I can't row at the moment, because I live just inside England, but my club's in Wales, and Wales is in full-on lockdown at the moment. So it's painful. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's amazing. You go out and no matter what the weather is, there's something beautiful to look at. You might get a swan fly past and it's nature watch. It's just fabulous, isn't it?
Meditative.
Yes. On a good outing.
I have a theory, which I have mentioned before on this podcast, which I first developed when I was rowing with Susanna Holt in Cambridge, that when the two of us in our double really felt we were in the groove, and we described it as when we think we're rowing like goddesses, that's the moment you're about to hit a tree.
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. I've been there. And actually our trees do move. I don't know about where you are, but the trees definitely move to catch you out. So yeah.
You can only go on.
Sorry?
You can only take the meditation so far.
Absolutely. But it's a beautiful moment when it happens.
It is. And I also find that I like the sort of determined people who are.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it attracts a certain type of person, quite sort of feisty and no nonsense. And I remember I had my first sort of rowing injury. I went to an osteopath, and I didn't immediately tell her how I got this injury. At first, I was just talking about what was wrong with it, and she was taking a look. And then she said, well, what sport do you do? And when I said I'm a rower, she just kind of rolled her eyes and said, oh, no. She said, how long have you been rowing? And I said, well, 2 years. And she said, well, there's only so much I can do for you, because rowers have a different understanding of pain, and they're not like normal people. She knew what she was talking about because her sister was a rower. But I kind of like that. I think, rowers I've very, very rarely met a rower I didn't like.
Do you know, that's a really, really good observation. And I've never heard anyone say it before, but you are absolutely right. There's something about the common shared endeavour.
Yeah. It's I think to stick with it, because it's so tempting to give up at the beginning when it's just so difficult. And I think particularly, it was less so for me. I think it's particularly hard if you take it up as an adult and you've been good at sport throughout your life. And so you expect to take to it easily. And I think I've noticed amongst people coming into our club that the people who've come into it with a long history of being really good at sport have kind of struggled, because they're having to go right back to the beginning and get used to being really bad at sport. Whereas for me, being bad at sport was just normal. That was my experience of all sports all through my life. So I didn't expect to be good at it. And so it wasn't disappointing and it wasn't too frustrating. But yeah, it is, you've got to be persistent to get sort of over that initial hump, haven't you?
You definitely have. And certainly schoolboys, they always say anecdotally that if you can't catch a cricket ball, you go rowing. And so that I suppose relates to the natural athlete will go play ball sports, and the unnatural unathlete will come and row.
Well, I definitely can't catch a cricket ball, so
you and me both. Now, talk us a little bit through some of your most popular blogs, because I know that you have some articles that have just hundreds and hundreds of views and comments and remarks. What are the things you write that really resonate?
Okay, so the first one that really took off right back at the beginning was what not to wear when you're rowing. And that was just kind of a fun, light-hearted post, but it made people laugh. And people could relate. I mean, it was things like, why you should never wear white. And we all know why. And, just kind of fun stuff, how you shouldn't kind of wear branded Leander kit if you're really bad at rowing, that kind of thing. And so that was kind of the beginning. And I've always tried to keep a bit of humor in the blog, because I think you've got to take a light-hearted approach to the sport, because otherwise you'll just cry. And then I've done a few that people have enjoyed because they've been a bit more instructional. I've done the odd video where I've how common mistakes on the erg. That's a sort of very popular one. I'm not sure. I never followed up with how to do it correctly, because I don't think that I'm good enough really to demonstrate it. But I'm very good at showing how not to do it. So I felt competent to demonstrate that. Yeah, just usually it's either something that's helpful to people because it's teaching them. Because I do have some readers who aren't rowers, or some who are indoor rowers and don't know much about rowing on water. And then just the fun stuff.
And mental health. I know that you've been very open very early about how we talk in rowing. What sort of guidance have you offered to your readers?
Well, I think it's just a question of constantly being mindful of it. There's a really good campaign group called Rowing Together for Healthy Minds, and they send out information to clubs that sign up, really telling people what to look out for when people are struggling with their mental health. And I think one of the things that I'm very keen on is not putting young rowers under pressure in relation to their weight. So that's not just for coxers, but for rowers as well, because I think you could do a huge amount of damage at a very difficult phase in young people's lives. So I think that's a really important one. If somebody does need to, if you do need to talk to someone about their weight, if it's affecting their health or something, it's perhaps not for the coach to do that. But if they feel that they do, I think it's really important to be very sensitive and understanding, the effect that you can have. But I had a really interesting conversation. I blogged about it at the time with someone from our club who had struggled with her mental health, and she said the problem is that you can go through the motions and then just feel that people don't necessarily understand why you're not quite being yourself. You can turn up, you can row, but things don't feel right, they don't fit together properly. So I think it's one of those areas where the sport is catching up, but we're not there yet. There's an awful lot of room for improvement. And I know British Rowing is conscious of this and working to improve protocols and talking about it more. And I think that's the more we talk about it and raise awareness, the better. But it's a difficult thing because we're not experts. Normally there isn't anyone on the committee who has an expertise in mental health issues, and it's easy to make mistakes. But I think we just earnestly have to try and educate ourselves.
Yeah, I think that there is that normalization. Talking about things makes it acceptable or more acceptable. Yeah. And you're absolutely right about, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's a mental health specialist, but I certainly have met a large number of people who have found a rowing club, got engaged with the sport because they have had issues in other parts of their lives, some form of disappointment, and have found solace in the sport and a place in the world that they feel comfortable. And so my sincere hope is that actually mental health can also fit in with that bracket of other things.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the difficult things at the moment, isn't it? Because a lot of people, there's such a huge disparity between different places around the world. You look on Facebook groups, international Facebook rowing groups, and there are some people who are competing in regattas and other people who aren't able to row at all. Yeah. And so that's really, for the people who are deprived of their main source of comfort in their lives, that's a really difficult thing at the moment. And I think we're going to have to work very hard when we do get back to rowing to kind of make sure we scoop up all the people who've got left behind and have struggled during the last year.
That's a very good observation. Now, I want to move on to another really big part of your blog. It's more recent history, and it's 10 years of life. You have had a cancer journey.
I have.
How did that all begin?
Okay, so it all kicked off in, the end of 2017. I became aware that something wasn't quite normal. It wasn't actually a lump. I noticed a sort of strange, thick area of tissue that just didn't feel quite right. So I went to my doctor and she sent me for tests. And initially we didn't think it was anything to worry about, but it turned out to be breast cancer. It was thankfully primary breast cancer, so very treatable. I had a mastectomy and then 4 months of chemo and a year of immunotherapy. So it was, quite a big deal. I lost my hair and my fingernails and my toenails, and it was quite a disruptive year, to say the least. But I had such amazing support from the rowing community. I couldn't quite believe it. I was sort of overwhelmed with love from people that I had never even met. My own club was fantastically supportive. I had friends from the club take me for my appointments, and just everybody gathered around me and kind of carried me along. So it made a huge difference. It made what could have been really traumatic much less so.
And what was it after you'd had that first diagnosis, that made you decide that this was going to be a part of your public persona?
Well, I did think about it a bit. It took me a little while to talk about it, but I kind of, as you're probably becoming aware, I kind of blether on quite a lot. I don't keep things to myself. And I talked about so many other aspects of my life. And I also kind of felt I had to explain why I was going to be out of the picture a bit for a few months. So I just took a deep breath and thought, right, I'll jump in. And I kind of thought that if I was going to get through this, I really liked the idea of having this kind of army of rowers on my side. And that proved to be the case. It was the best move, actually going really public about it and documenting it as I went along. And to my amazement, having sort of opened up about it, I then discovered that I was going to be able to row during my treatment, which I'd assumed just at the beginning, I assumed that I wouldn't be able to. But I had a surgeon who was very keen for me to get back on the river as fast as possible after my surgery. And then I came across Helene Rainsford, who is a Paralympic gold medalist, and she had had breast cancer and had rode through her treatment. So she gave me amazing advice about everything from pacing myself to hand hygiene to, what to take in the boat with me. And so I actually rode all through my chemo, which was fantastic. It just made all the difference to my state of mind. Being able to get out on the river, in between times just gave me that bit of normality. And I used to find my side effects would kind of vanish when I was on the river. Things that had been itching would stop itching, and my eyes, which constantly watered because I had no eyelashes, just stopped. It was just miraculous. It was fantastic. So it was the most healing thing I could have done.
So for people who might have friends or might themselves be facing a cancer journey with rowing, can you talk us through the cycle of how frequently were your treatments and how did you approach doing exercise in between them?
Okay, so I had my my mastectomy first and then my chemo. So before my chemo, I only had one outing where I was kind of well enough to go out and row. So I was in a slightly debilitated state, obviously, by the time my chemo started. But the type of chemo I had was something called FEC-T. So it was every 3 weeks over a course of 4 months, I would have an infusion. And typically I'd have a few days at the beginning where I'd feel pretty rough. In the first half of that cycle, I felt quite queasy. With the second drug I was given, so the last 2 months, I didn't feel so sick, but I had kind of shooting pain. So there were always a few days where I felt bad. So I just wait them out. I'd go for a walk every day if I felt well enough. There were a few days along the way where I just was face down on the sofa, couldn't do anything, and I just allowed myself to do that. But usually by week 2 of the 3 weeks, I was feeling well enough to go out, and I would just go out in a single, so I didn't have to let anyone down if I didn't feel up to it. And I would paddle gently up and down the river. And I would pace myself, listen to how I felt. Well, that's the official story. That's how it was supposed to be. Except that in the first time I went out on the river, this ridiculous idea came into my head that I would compete in Ross Regatta, which is the one I mentioned earlier, which was 4 weeks after my last infusion. So that was quite a big ask, and I'd never raced in a single before. But my bright idea was that everyone would feel so sorry for me because I was bald and kind of, so that if I really messed up, if I was really bad and I couldn't steer and all the things that you're worried about in your first race as a single, I thought I'd get away with it, and it wouldn't matter how slow I was because, sad cancer face, oh, I'm really ill. So I actually started training secretly for this race. So I would be officially just kind of gently paddling up and down, but I would secretly put in a few little pressure pieces. So I would do kind of 3 minutes, usually a little bit more firm. And I did do that race. I was very slow. I came last, obviously, in my heat.
Wow.
I lost by 3.5 lengths, which is respectable over 750.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It just made, it was really hard. I mean, I got to the end of the race and I had to be kind of helped out of the boat, but it just gave me something to work towards. I'd probably, if any, you were asking this for the benefit of anyone who's, going through cancer or has a friend, don't advise them, obviously, to do that, because that's not really very sensible. But for me, it kept me going. It made me feel like a human being, and it was great.
Wow, that is just the most fantastic story. I'm going to ask you right now, live on air, if you'll write that up for my Rowing Tales book.
Yeah, of course I will.
That would be brilliant. I think the secret 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That is just fantastic. And you know, thumbs up to, you know, obviously Row for the Cure, which is a well-known group, more US, I think, based, where they obviously support cancer survivors. And Helene, what an amazing lady in her own right. And I had obviously no idea until you mentioned it just now that she had had her own journey.
Yep.
So what's coming up for girlontheriver.com?
Well, I've got 3 issues that I'm kind of focusing on at the moment. One is the environment. So I've set up a Facebook group called, it's got a rather grandiose title, Rowers United to Save the Planet. But it's basically a Facebook group for anyone around the world who's interested in making rowing a bit more sustainable. And it's a place just to share information and tips. So if you discover some way of cleaning ergs that is kind of, you know, COVID friendly, or the opposite of COVID friendly, but doesn't destroy the planet, then, you know, that kind of thing, you know, people doing that, because there are an awful lot of clubs who individually are doing amazing things for the environment, but we haven't sort of got a united front yet. So this is just a way of people sharing tips and ideas and resources and links and all that kind of thing. So it's actually much more low key than its grandiose title would suggest. The second is mental health, which I've talked about. And the third is kind of diversity and accessibility. And I think this is another thing where the sport is catching up. We're getting better on that, but again, there's a long way to go. So those are kind of, if I'm banging on about issues this year, those will be the three big things.
Where do you get your inspiration from to write?
It's usually just whatever's going on in my rowing life. So it really is kind of a diary, not in the strictest sense, but it does reflect what's going on. And quite often ideas come to me when I'm actually on the river. I'll be rowing along, don't tell the cox, but, you know, sometimes just an idea will come to me, and that's, yeah, inspiration strikes. And in the shower, I have good ideas in the shower too. So it's not just eyes out of the boat.
You're not the only one. My big challenge, because I, like you, write frequently for work as well as for rowing, and I find I have to capture the essence of the idea quite quickly, otherwise I forget about it. And then I enjoy the process of editing and reviewing and revising. And that for me is almost as pleasurable as having had the idea in the first place. You know, how can I condense it? How can I swap things around so that the message doesn't get lost? Do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's you've got to strike when the idea is hot, and then there's tinkering. Lots of tinkering goes on afterwards.
Yeah, if you ever want to laugh and you're with me, I'll show you all the draft blog posts that never see the light of day. That's a really hideous idea. I'm going to have to be desperate if I've got to publish that.
Yeah, I got a few of those in the draft folder.
That has been absolutely wonderful, Patricia. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, for listeners, I will ask Patricia to share links with us, certainly for the Rowers United to Save the Planet Facebook group, and also the Rowing Together for Healthy Minds, which you mentioned earlier as well. So I'll put those in the show notes, so you don't have to scrabble around while you're driving or cycling or erging to write them down. You'll be able to find them. And where can people follow you and connect with you online?
Okay, so my blog, as you've said, is girlontheriver.com. Then I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and it's at Girl on the River on all channels. So Facebook is /Girl on the River, and I'm pretty easy to find.
And obviously they're linked from the bottom of the blog as well.
Yes, they are.
Fantastic. Any last words?
I suppose the only thing to say is, you know, if you're not able to row at the moment and you're struggling and finding it really difficult, just, you know, get online and chat, because there are rowers out there who are all feeling the same. And I think we've really got to pull together at the moment. And yeah, just, you know, reach out. ask, come and say hi to me online, whatever. Just and if you can see your rowing friends off the river, then do. I can't at the moment because most of my friends are in Wales and we can't even go for a walk together. But if you can't do that, then just come say hi online.
Or fix up Zooms. We did a virtual race, the head of the Charles, and
you did that.
A crew from Brisbane, Australia got in touch with us. There were only 3 8s entered, one from Cork in Ireland, us and this Brisbane crew. And they got in touch. They found us online and they said, hey, would you like to have a crew to crew Zoom? Here's a photo of our crew, which was super.
Oh, that's so nice. That's just brilliant.
And share your stories. I think when you're not rowing, it helps to remember what was fun and frightful and hideous and embarrassing and hilarious and stupid. And so there was certainly an ongoing club joke at a club I was formerly a member of from the coaches, where whenever they were driving a launch down the river, they would make a circle with their thumb and forefinger. And if you turned your head to look at it, it was kind of like they'd scored a point against you. It was very juvenile. And you would be sculling along, looking the other way. Don't look. I'm sure he's going to go like that. And sharing those little anecdotes is a really good way of, reminding yourselves of the bonds and the idiocies and the laughter.
Definitely.
So to all of our listeners, thank you for coming on this journey with us. To Patricia for giving us her time and her story and her insights. Please follow her online, sign up, read those blogs, find the archive, because it's a fabulous read. And even just dipping in and out, I am always getting great pleasure from your writing. So please don't stop.
Thank you so much.
And till everybody else, till next time, bye-bye.